They say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes love is thicker than both. That's what I tried to explain to my mother-in-law Eleanor when she called to discuss the annual Christmas gathering at Ashworth Manor, the sprawling family estate that had hosted Montgomery family celebrations for 4 generations. I'm Catherine Montgomery, though I started life as Catherine Parker from a middle-class family in Vermont. Marrying into the Montgomerys meant entering a world of old money, older traditions, and expectations higher than the manor's wrought iron gates. My late husband James had warned me about his family's particular ways, but he'd always protected me from the worst of it. Now, 10 months after losing him to a heart attack, I was learning just how cruel those particular ways could be. Catherine, darling, Eleanor's voice dripped honey-coated venom through the phone. About the Christmas gathering. We think it's best if you just bring Thomas this year. Leave the other one at home. My hand tightened on the phone. The other one has a name, Eleanor. It's Grace, your granddaughter. She's not my granddaughter, Eleanor snapped, dropping her sugary tone. She's some Chinese orphan James insisted on adopting. Thomas is our blood, our legacy. Grace is, well, she's your charity project. The words hit like physical blows. Grace, my beautiful 8-year-old daughter who James and I had adopted from China as a baby. Grace, who shared James's love of chess and my passion for piano. Grace, who still cried herself to sleep some nights missing her daddy. Grace is as much a Montgomery as Thomas, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. James made that clear in every way possible. James isn't here anymore, Eleanor replied coldly, and the Montgomery Christmas celebration is for family, real family. Surely you understand. I glanced at the framed photo on my desk. James and me with our children at last year's Christmas party. Thomas, now 12, grinning with his father's dimples. Grace in her red velvet dress, beaming as she sat on James's lap. We'd looked so happy, so complete. Actually, I don't understand, I said, and neither would James. Eleanor sighed dramatically. Catherine, don't be difficult. The other families are coming, the Ashworths, the Caldwells, the Whitmores. We have traditions to uphold. Appearances to maintain. Appearances, I echoed. You mean you're embarrassed by your adopted granddaughter? Don't twist my words. I'm simply saying that the Montgomery Christmas gathering has certain standards. Grace would feel out of place. It's kinder to exclude her. I hung up without responding. My hands shook as I set the phone down, rage and grief warring in my chest. Through the study window, I could see Grace and Thomas in the garden, working on their homework together. They'd grown even closer since losing their father, Thomas becoming fiercely protective of his younger sister. The study, James's study, still smelled faintly of his cologne. I barely touched anything since his death, but now I moved to his desk with purpose. James had always been meticulously organized, especially when it came to family matters. He'd known his mother's prejudices better than anyone. Sometimes the best defense is careful preparation, he told me once, showing me where he kept important documents, especially with my family. It took me an hour to find what I was looking for, buried in a folder marked Family Trust, Private. As I read through the papers, my hands trembled for a different reason. James had been more thorough than I'd imagined, more strategic in his planning. The Montgomery family fortune, including Ashworth Manor, wasn't controlled by Eleanor at all. The entire estate had been restructured years ago, placed in a trust with very specific conditions. Conditions that Eleanor either didn't know about or had conveniently forgotten. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. Mom, Grace is crying. She overheard Grandma on the phone. I found him in Grace's room. She was curled up in Thomas's arms, her math homework forgotten on the floor. My brilliant, beautiful daughter looked up at me with tear-stained cheeks. Why doesn't Grandma want me? She whispered. Is it because I'm adopted? Because I'm not really family? I sat on the bed, gathering both my children close. Listen to me, both of you. Family isn't about blood. It's about love. Your father knew that better than anyone. But Grandma says, Grace started. Grandma is wrong, Thomas interrupted fiercely. You're my sister. Period. I kissed them both, my heart swelling with pride at Thomas's protective instincts. Your brother's right, Grace, and I promise you, this Christmas will be different. That night, after the children were asleep, I made 3 calls. The first was to Harrison Walsh, the family's longtime lawyer who'd helped James set up the trust. The second was to Aunt Margaret, James's favorite aunt who'd always oppose Eleanor's traditional views. The third was to David Montgomery, James's cousin and the only family member who'd openly challenged Eleanor's authority over the years. "It's time," I told each of them. "James left everything in place. We just need to execute the plan." Eleanor's next call came 2 days later. "Catherine, you're being unreasonable. Thomas needs to maintain his connections with the right families. The Whitmore's son will be there. You know they're considering Thomas for their exclusive prep school. You wouldn't want to jeopardize his future over sentimentality." I thought of the trust documents in James's desk, of the carefully laid plans my husband had made to protect both his children. "You're right about one thing, Eleanor. This is about the future, just not in the way you think." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'll see you at the Christmas gathering, with both my children. Catherine and Eleanor, you might want to review the family trust documents before then. Carefully." I hung up, wondering if she could hear the steel in my voice, steel forged by months of grief, anger, and protective love for my children. James had taught me that sometimes the best revenge isn't swift action, but careful preparation followed by perfect timing. The annual Montgomery Christmas gathering was 3 weeks away. Eleanor had no idea that her carefully controlled world was about to shatter like the crystal champagne flutes she was so proud of. Ashworth Manor was a sight to behold on Christmas Eve, its Victorian grandeur enhanced by twinkling lights and elaborate decorations. Snow dusted the manicured grounds like powdered sugar, and through the towering windows, I could see the infamous 20-foot Christmas tree dominating the grand hall. "Remember," I told Grace as we walked up the steps, her small hand clutching mine, "you have every right to be here. You're a Montgomery." Thomas walked on Grace's other side, practically radiating protective energy. At 12, he was already showing signs of becoming the kind of man his father had been. Strong, principled, and fiercely loyal to family. Eleanor met us at the door, her smile brittle as she saw Grace. "Catherine, I thought I made myself clear." "Crystal clear," I interrupted smoothly. "Shall we go in? I believe Harrison Walsh is waiting for us in the library." The mention of the family lawyer made Eleanor's perfect posture stiffen further. "Harrison? Why would he?" "All in good time," I said, ushering my children past her. The grand hall was already filling with guests, the cream of Boston society in designer clothing and family heirlooms. I noticed several people doing double takes at Grace's presence, whispering behind manicured hands. Aunt Margaret swooped in immediately, enveloping Grace in a warm hug. "There's my favorite chess partner. Grace, darling, you must tell me how your tournament went last week." I smiled gratefully at Margaret as she led Grace toward the refreshments, skillfully integrating her into a group of children who looked far more interested in cookies than ancestry. "Catherine." David Montgomery appeared at my elbow, handsome in his tailored suit. "Everything's ready in the library. Harrison has the documents prepared." Eleanor was watching us suspiciously from across the room, obviously trying to figure out what was happening. She'd spent years cultivating her image as the family matriarch, the keeper of Montgomery traditions. She had no idea that James had spent just as many years preparing for this moment. The library had always been my favorite room in Ashworth Manor. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather chairs that smelled of history, and James's presence somehow strongest here among his beloved books. Harrison Walsh stood by the massive oak desk, arranging papers with practiced precision. "Shall we begin?" he asked as Eleanor swept in, followed by several key family members she'd obviously summoned for support. "Begin what exactly?" Eleanor demanded. "Catherine, what is the meaning of this spectacle? Bringing that child here against my explicit wishes." "That child," I cut in, "is Grace Montgomery, James's daughter and legal heir to the Montgomery Family Trust. And before you start spouting more nonsense about blood and tradition, you might want to hear what Harrison has to say." Harrison cleared his throat. "Mrs. Montgomery, Eleanor, I have here the full trust documents for Ashworth Manor and the Montgomery family estate. Documents that James had me revise 5 years ago, shortly after Grace's adoption was finalized." Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. Yes, we all know the trust parameters. The estate passes through the male line, maintaining the Montgomery legacy." "Actually," Harrison interrupted gently, "that's not correct. James made some rather significant changes. The trust now specifies that inheritance passes equally to all his legal children, biological or adopted. Furthermore, he paused, adjusting his glasses. The trust contains specific anti-discrimination clauses. Any attempt to exclude or discriminate against a legal heir based on their adoption status results in immediate redistribution of control. The color drained from Eleanor's face. What? In simple terms, I said, by attempting to exclude Grace from family events and challenging her status as a Montgomery, you violated the trust conditions. As of this moment, control of Ashworth Manor and the majority of the Montgomery estate passes to a board of trustees, led by myself and David, until both Thomas and Grace reach adulthood. The library erupted in chaos. Eleanor's supporters were shouting about tradition and family legacy, while David and Aunt Margaret moved to stand beside me, presenting a united front. This is preposterous. Eleanor's voice rose above the din. James would never. James did. David's quiet voice cut through the noise. Because he knew exactly who you were, Aunt Eleanor. He knew you'd try something like this after he was gone. I pulled out one final document, a letter in James's familiar handwriting. He left this for you, Eleanor. He asked me to give it to you if this day ever came. Eleanor's hands trembled as she took the envelope. As she read, tears began rolling down her cheeks, smearing her perfect makeup. My dear mother, she read aloud, her voice breaking. If you're reading this, it means you've chosen your precious traditions over my daughter's happiness. I've watched you all my life, seeing how your obsession with blood and legacy has poisoned our family. I loved you, but I refuse to let you do to my children what you did to me and my cousins. Grace is my daughter in every way that matters. By choosing to reject her, you reject me and everything I believed in. The choice, and the consequences, are yours. With love and hope for your eventual understanding, James. The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor sank into a leather chair, the letter falling from her limp fingers. The annual Christmas party will continue, I announced to the room. All family members, all of them, are welcome. Those who have a problem with that are free to leave. Nobody left. Instead, something remarkable happened. Cousin Alice's daughter rushed over to Grace, asking her to play the piano. The Whitmore children invited Thomas to show them his new video game. Slowly, the younger generation led the way, showing their elders what real family acceptance looked like. Later that evening, I found Eleanor alone in the conservatory, staring out at the snowing gardens. He was right about me, she whispered as I approached. I've spent so long protecting what I thought was important. I forgot what actually matters. It's not too late to change, I said quietly. Grace has an amazing capacity for forgiveness. She gets that from James. Eleanor turned to me, her face stripped of its usual perfect mask. Would you help me learn to be better? For Grace? For James? I thought about James, about his belief in redemption and second chances. Yes, I said finally, but you have to prove you mean it. Actions, not words. The changes didn't happen overnight. Eleanor had decades of prejudice to unlearn, but she committed to the process with the same determination she once applied to maintaining traditions. She started with small steps, attending Grace's piano recitals, asking about her chess competitions, learning to cook Chinese food for Lunar New Year celebrations. A year later, Grace's 9th birthday party was held at Ashworth Manor. Eleanor surprised everyone by hiring a Chinese cultural group to perform traditional dances and music. Watching Grace teach her grandmother how to use chopsticks, I saw James's dream of a truly united family slowly becoming reality. The old family portrait gallery at Ashworth Manor has a new addition now. Next to the stern-faced Montgomerys of generations past hangs a photo of our modern family. Thomas and Grace front and center, Eleanor and me on either side, surrounded by cousins of various ages and backgrounds. Below it, Eleanor insisted on adding a new family motto. Legacy lives in love, not blood. James would have liked that. Sometimes, when I watch Grace and Thomas playing chess in the library using James' old set, I think about how love can reshape even the most rigid traditions. Eleanor still occasionally slips into her old patterns, but now she catches herself, remembering James's letter and the choice she almost made. The annual Christmas gathering has evolved too. It's less about showing off family connections and more about actual family. Last year, Grace invited her entire international adoption support group to attend. The sight of children from various backgrounds running through Ashworth Manor's halls. Playing hide and seek behind priceless antiques would have given the old Eleanor heart palpitations. The new Eleanor just smiled and ordered more cookies. Thomas, now 13, has become Grace's fiercest advocate. When a new student at his prep school made a comment about adopted siblings not being real family, Thomas' response was pure James. Family is who you choose to love. Everything else is just details. As for me, I've learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is standing firm in defense of those who can't defend themselves. James knew that. It's why he put those conditions in the trust, why he planned so carefully for a future he wouldn't see. He knew that true legacy isn't about blood or names or traditions. It's about the love we choose to give and the family we choose to build. Grace keeps James's letter on her bedside table. She reads it sometimes, running her fingers over his handwriting. Daddy knew, she told me recently. He knew I was meant to be a Montgomery. Yes, he did. And now, finally, everyone else knows it too.